Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Block, presented by Around the Block Network. Matthew Mikulik here, your host, and let's get into what we always do in a couple of headlines, starting off with the Kentucky Derby. It was probably one of the most shocking derbies of all time. Why is that? That's because an 80-1 odd horse finally won the Derby, posting the second worst odds to ever win the Derby of all time. That's right. Rich Strike on the final lap was able to make a move, come out of nowhere and beat the favorite Epicenter in the final length of the race. Probably one of the most interesting Kentucky Derbies we've seen in a long time. Going over to the UFC, Charles Oliver era won his main event in the final round and did a pretty good job, but also too with the women's co-main event. Carla was able to finish off pretty strong, getting a nice title for herself and making herself known in the UFC at 274. And to finish off, we have the PGA Championship that will be coming up in a couple weeks here at Southern Hills. Already, some of the favorites to win the tournament are people like Brooks Koepka, Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Patrick Cantley, Jordan Spieth, and Justin Thomas. So with that, also, I'd like to hand it over to the NHL group who's going to break down the NHL playoffs in the first round. Boys.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for everyone for tuning in today. I'm your host, Sam Shetra, joined as always by my co host, Harrison Dupree. Harrison, how are your picks looking so far in this playoffs?
They're looking okay. Some of them are really bad. Some of them are pretty accurate.
Yeah, I think one thing I forgot to take into account with choosing my picks was that hockey's random and nothing ever makes sense in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But overall, how are you feeling about the playoffs so far?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not really liking this year's playoffs so far.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I'm with you. Like a lot of blowouts, not all that many great games. We've had a couple good ones, like Pittsburgh and the Rangers was a pretty good one, and the Connor Ingram game in Nashville was also pretty impressive. But
yes.
blowouts both ways. It's hard to get a read so far for either series.
No. Other than the Preds one, really. But we'll get to that. But yeah, I don't know. Um, it just seems like both teams on each side are like they outmatch each other every other game, and you just can't really tell who's the better team in a lot of these series. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but yeah, it's just weird to see all these like high scoring games and it kind of sucks because I mean, yes, I love goals, but the thing about the playoffs is that the goals mean more. So it's really fun when it's like a 2-2 game or a 1-1 game and it goes to overtime, or it's like 5 minutes left in the third and then someone gets that goal to to propel themselves forward to the win. But you don't really see that. You just see one team just piling on the goals and then that's it. Like you said, there's been a few exceptions, like the Rangers and Penguins game that went to third overtime, the overtime game in game 2 of the Nashville series. There's been a few other close games, but yeah.
Yeah, it's goals don't mean so much when it's only one team scoring them. But
Mhm.
let's dive right in with our first series: the Panthers and the Capitals. The Capitals currently lead the series 2-1 after their really impressive Game 3 win, 6-1 in Washington.
Yeah.
Harrison, I picked the Panthers in 6 before the series. I knew it would be tough, but the Capitals look to have their number so far.
Yeah, I know you're upset a little bit. I don't know. Maybe the Panthers will come back. I still think they'll win the series in 7 games. But yeah, the Caps look a lot better than I thought they would be. Um, I don't know. They're definitely gonna go out with a fight. I could definitely see the Caps stealing this series, but I think this is good for the Panthers. They've been a really good team so far, and I think they need a challenge early in the playoffs to really prove themselves so that, if they can propel themselves to the finals, they need to prove themselves by any round of the playoffs is super competitive. So I think teams need to understand that, it's not going to be a cakewalk every round. I mean, I know Colorado's leading Nashville 3-0, but one of those games was competitive. I mean, every game is going to be somewhat competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, this Panthers team, they were the heavy favorites going in, and rightfully so. And they just don't look like the same team. This offense that was the most explosive offense since Lemieux's Penguins just isn't generating their chances that they normally do. Washington seems to really have done a good job slowing them down. And Washington hasn't had the best chances 5-on-5, but their power play has been excellent. And that's how they're getting these games away. They're just shutting them down 5-on-5 and power play too. The Panthers power play has been ugly. And then just taking them out when they have the man advantage. And the Panthers haven't looked like themselves, except for that one stretch halfway through game 2, they put something together. But if they need to find who they were if they want a chance in this series.
I agree.
So you're sticking with your pick?
I'm sticking with my pick, but I'm picking Panthers in 7 now.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Next pick, the Hurricanes and the Bruins. Early on in this series, it looked like the Hurricanes had the Bruins on the number. They were winning the games convincingly. But since that most recent game, since game 3, when they reunited the perfection line, Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak, they turned the series around. The Bruins have won the last 2 games at home. It's true, but still winning them convincingly. Marchand put up 5 points this afternoon. So what do you see from this series?
This one's one of my better predictions. I said that Carolina would win in 7, and I am sticking with that pick. I think it's going to come down to who has home advantage last, and that's Carolina. It was really one-sided the first 2 games where Carolina won both, and then it's been really one-sided with Boston winning both. I think they match up against each other really well, and even though, like I said, it's really hard to tell which team's the better team, I think Carolina will still win this one just purely because of home advantage, because, it's so hard to see with just so many blowouts because, Carolina's offense has played insane the first 2 games, and then they turned it off the past 2 games at Boston. So it's kind of hard to tell, but I'm still going to stick with my pick with Carolina in 7.
Yeah, after those first 2 games, it really looks like Carolina just had them. These games were closer than I think the score would indicate, but still, I think Carolina had a clear edge. And the last 2 games in Boston with the perfection line reunited, it changed completely. I'm sticking with my pick. I'm sticking with Boston in 7. But, man, it's just so hard to get a read on these series. These games aren't close. They're blowouts one way, blowouts the other way. But, we'll see how this series goes. I do expect that Carolina bounces back. I don't think they're done here. I think they'll figure out something to combat that perfection line. But, I think this is a 7-game series either way.
Yeah.
All right. Our next series that really, really embodies the one blowout, another blowout is the Maple Leafs and the Lightning. The Maple Leafs currently lead 2-1 in that series. They've had having 2 excellent games and 1 just horrible game. So, like you were saying, just hard to really feel who's the real better team here. But what do you think overall?
Yeah, this is another weird one because it's been blowouts every game on both sides. I'm still going to say the Lightning win this series just because I really don't want Toronto to make it past the first round just because of the memes. But yeah, I mean, Toronto's had a really good offense. Maybe this is the year that they propel themselves, but I'm going to say Lightning in 6. I think the Lightning will win the next 3 games.
Really?
I think they're going to – I agree with you what you said last week that they're tired, but this is the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I think they're tired of I think they're mad that they've lost 2 games in this series. This is not like them, so I think they're going to wake up a little bit, use their bit of energy on the Leafs, and get to the second round, and then we'll see from there.
So I think this next game, game 4, will be the most telling. because those first two games pretty much went how I would think they would go. Toronto has the home crowd. They're rowdy. They blow out that first game. They looked dominant. It looked like it could be a sweep. Then Tampa responds right after. It's what they do. It's what they've been doing for 3 years now. They responded, and then the series goes back to Tampa, and they get blown out on their home ice in front of their fans.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think they're going to take that again. I think that I know they've won 2 back-to-back cups, but their standard is so high. I think that, they're pissed off that they lost on their home ice in a blowout to their fans. Lightning fans have been very spoiled the past few years, so I'm sure it was not fun to see that a team that's had so much success get destroyed on their home ice.
Yeah, I mean, just getting blown out like that doesn't seem like Tampa, though.
Yeah, I agree.
To me, this is Toronto's series. I went in with Toronto in 7. I might even change it to Toronto in 6. I think as good as they looked in Game 2, Tampa is outmatched here from not necessarily a talent perspective, but from a drive perspective. Toronto has that real need and their real desire to win just at least a series.
Yeah, they really need it.
They really need it. With Austin Matthews, his not necessarily pending free agency, but it's 2 years away at this point. They've got to prove something to him, or he could leave. I think they need. Yeah, I think they need.
If you have a 60 goal scorer on your roster, you should win one playoff series. That is my.
You're absolutely right.
If they get eliminated in the first round with a 60 goal scorer, even though I do want them to get eliminated, but they should not get eliminated. They have a guy who has scored 60 goals. Only 2 other players have done that in recent years. So it's
a once a decade thing to score 60 goals.
Exactly.
It was Stamkos in 2012, 10 years ago, and then Ovi in 2008. Like, it doesn't happen. So, it does not happen. And they have it. They have one. They have to capitalize. This has to be a year they win something.
Yeah.
So I say they do it. You say they don't. We'll just have to see. All right, our last series coming out of the East is the Penguins and the Rangers. Mm-hmm. This series, I think I have the best read on out of all of them. I picked the Rangers going into this, and not because I like the Rangers, but because I think they had the most momentum going in, and I think because of Jari's injury, I just didn't think the Penguins really had it. I am kicking myself for that. I went against my instincts, and I should have known. The Penguins are clearly the better team in this series. The series is tied 2-2. Penguins are up 2-1 in this series. They could be up 3-0 with bounces, Yeah. They just look like the better team with their third string goalie, Louis Dominguez, in there and making save after save. Like, he looks great. The team looks great. What do you think?
I believe I picked the Penguins in 6 or 7. I don't remember. I know I picked the Penguins. Like I said, the Rangers are I just don't think they have it yet for the playoffs. And I think Pittsburgh's experience, one last ride. Sidney Crosby been playing insane. I just think that they have that, experience to edge over the Rangers. I think I picked Penguins in 6. I'm going to stick with that pick. I think the Rangers might steal one more game just because they have a lot of good bounces on their side, but I just feel like the Penguins are going to easily win the series.
Yeah, absolutely. I picked the Rangers in 5 going into it. Mm-hmm. I knew their record was a little bit of fool's gold just going on the back of a great Igor Shesterkin year. But he's tired. They rode him into the ground. Their depth that they picked up, Vetrano, Kopp, it's not enough. It's not enough to complement that top line. They're outmatched, really. Whether it's just experience or raw talent, the Penguins have them. I'm going with you, Penguins in 6. Shesterkin steals them one more game.
Yeah.
But this series I feel the most confident on out of all of them.
Well, now we have the same pick for that series.
Yeah, I think that's our only same pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the West now. The Colorado Avalanche and the Nashville Predators.
This one's the same pick. Yeah.
Colorado looks better I'll say. Colorado looks like the better team.
Yeah.
And I thought the Predators had a chance to steal a game here. Maybe I underestimated Saro's importance to this team, or I underestimated the Avalanche, and maybe I overestimated just the Predators' talent, but they look dead in the water.
Yeah. As you can tell, I'm not very happy about it, but it was expected. Avs in 4, that can definitely happen. Yeah, my new prediction. You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna keep my prediction with Avs in 5. I think I'm going to no Preds backdrop today. Yeah, I'm moving out of my dorm room so soon, so I got rid of a lot of my clothes. So sorry about that. But and also I'm just kind of mad at the Preds because they've been really not competitive at all.
Yeah.
The defense has some of its strong points. You got Yossi. Yossi's had a fairly good series, but he can't carry a whole entire defense. I think Duchesne has been our only bright spot in our offense. He's had 3 goals this series.
Urgent year for Matt Duchesne. Really good.
Very good year for Matt Duchesne. And then biggest positive of our team is Connor Ingram. David Riddick. Connor Ingram should be our backup next year, I think. I think he's proved himself in game 2 that he is ready for the NHL. We got blown out yesterday, but it was a close game for a while. The problem with that game is all year the Predators have been one of the most penalized teams in the league, and it's been a huge liability for them. And we saw that yesterday. The Avalanche scored on almost every one of their power plays. We aren't disciplined. We can't stay out of the box. And, with a rookie goaltender, even if he's really good, it's a goal's going to trickle in almost every time when he's getting screened by an extra guy. So it's not surprising that they're up 3-0. They just have so much offensive firepower. Darcy Kemper went down. Pavel Francouz, he's a great backup, I think. I wasn't surprised that he played not that bad. Just the Avs look entirely better. I was really hoping we were going to steal that game with Ingram just because of how good he played, but obviously we didn't. They have Cale Makar, who's insane, but
insane.
It's still really hard to sweep a team in hockey, and I think, maybe the Preds will finally get shown that we need to kind of rebuild and not just make the playoffs every year and then get destroyed, because that's happened the past 3 years. So, I won't be surprised at all if we get swept, but just because of a little bit of Preds bias, I'm just going to keep my pick at 5. I think we will steal a home game tomorrow. But if it goes the Avs way, it goes the Avs way, and that's all I had to say about that.
Yeah, it's just how long Nashville can extend this series. They could definitely push it a little bit, but they look outmatched. Cale Makar is a different level of player. He's unreal, but at least the David Riddick experiment is over for them. Connor Ingram looks like a pretty good goalie, so there's something.
Yeah.
But moving on to the next series, that is the Calgary Flames and the Dallas Stars. I gotta say, I'm a little surprised by Dallas here. They've
very surprised.
Been really, really competitive in the series. They lead it 2-1. What do you think about this one?
I think I've picked the Flames in 5 or 6. I'm flipping that to Dallas in 6. Dallas has just been really impressive, and the Flames have been really disappointing. And Dallas has won some really gritty games. And I think they're going to keep that momentum up. They kind of remind me of when they played Nashville a few years ago. They just kind of have that grit to them. I'm not saying they're going to go far in the playoffs, but I think they're going to steal this series. And it's been really interesting to watch. I think this has been definitely the most interesting series, matchup-wise in the playoffs, just because I thought Calgary was going to trounce Dallas. But Dallas has really came to play. It's kind of fluky again. And Dallas has always been that type of team when they they made their way to the Stanley Cup final a few years ago. This kind of reminds me of that team. Like I said, I don't think they're going to go far, but I think they will beat Calgary and upset them, which is not good. But I think that's what's going to happen. So I'm flipping my pick from Calgary in 6 to Dallas in 6.
Interesting. All right. So I definitely underestimated Dallas here. I picked Calgary in 4. I'm very high on Calgary. I think their depth and their goal scoring is really, really good. But man, Dallas has proven me wrong. They have the young talent and the veteran leadership, like Pavelski, and like Pavelski's been really good for them.
Yeah.
And so them combined with Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson, I mean, they're a competitive team. I just didn't trust their defense and their goaltending, really. Heiskanen and Klingberg. Heiskanen's good, but Klingberg isn't locked down like maybe you would think a top 2 defenseman should. Either way, they've come out and they've played defensive games and they've stolen a couple. I still think Calgary is too good. I think they'll figure it out, and I would pick them in 7 instead of 4 like I did. But I got to give props to Dallas here. They have a bright future, really, even with Ben aging out, Pavelski aging out, Sagan falling off the face of the earth. He was a star.
Dude, I know. He is so bad now. Or I mean, he's still an NHL player, but he is definitely not like Tyler Sagan anymore.
No, he's not Tyler Sagan.
Yeah.
It's really insane.
Yeah.
But Hintz and Robertson to complement those guys with Heiskanen on the back end, I kind of like what they're building, and they're kind of proving me wrong. There's something there. And so even if they don't make it out of this series, I don't think they will. I would look out for them in the future. I would. Next series, really. What's that?
I said I think they're going to get out of it.
I would love to see it, honestly. All right. Next series, we have the Minnesota Wild and the St. Louis Blues. This is another one of those series that we thought would go 7. We thought would be an excellent series, but it's just been blowout after blowout after blowout for both teams. The game right now is going on right now. The Blues are leading 3-2. That might be the first close game of the series, honestly. And the Blues are dominating that game. If you look at the shot totals, it's really one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
So this series, talk a little bit about what you think this series is going on. How do you think it's going to go in the future, too?
I'm still keeping my pick with Minnesota in 7. Like you said, it's blowout after blowout, but I think this is finally the game where we get to see the matchup. And, I mean, even if the Blues win this game and tie the series up, I think this game is still going to show that even if Minnesota drops a game, they're still going to win the series, if that makes sense. I don't know. I just think Minnesota is just a more well-rounded team. I think, a lot of people have been predicting the Blues as a sleeper pick to go far, but I think the Minnesota Wild is a sleeper pick to go far, and I think they win the series in 7. So this pick I'm keeping, even though it's been blowout after blowout. I think each game has been one or the other, so I think it will be down to the wire, and I think Minnesota will pull off the series win.
Mm-hmm. So just to correct what I said earlier, the St. Louis Blues started off like a 4-19 goal shot differential. It's gone close now. It's 31-26 in shots now. So this game actually has been pretty close and competitive.
Yeah,
Minnesota has made it a good game finally, but this series has been very strange. But I think these teams are pretty evenly matched. I'm really impressed. Binnington's in net now over Husso. I think they made that change. Maybe they'll recap some of that magic they had in 2018 or 2019, excuse me. But this series has been interesting. I'm sticking with my pick. I think Kaprizov and the depth they have with Zuccarello and Eriksson Ek and all those guys, and Matthew Boldy, one of my favorite rookies of the year. It's a good team, and this is a really good series. But I'm still sticking with Minnesota. I would take them maybe as a sleeper pick too. They're a good team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Fleury in net has been also really good. You can always trust him.
I told you, playoff Fleury is something else.
Different. Yeah. Really good redemption arc for him too, because he was not always the playoff Fleury. He had some pretty big losses with Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, last series, Oilers and Kings. So this is a pretty good one. Oilers up 2-1 in this series after losing game 1. They found a way to bounce back. They've been clearly the better team, I'd say, but the defensive presence of Danault and Kopitar have made it difficult for guys like McDavid and Draisaitl to really get going, except on power play. But this series has been, I think, better than I thought. But overall, what do you think?
This is the one I'm kind of kicking myself in the foot for because I picked the Oilers to sweep. I don't know why I picked this Oilers to sweep because I forgot how bad their defense is sometimes. I still think the Oilers will win the series though because they've just been super dominant the last 2 games. I'm probably gonna take the Oilers in 6 now. My sweet pick definitely should have been Nashville. There's just Preds bias there, but anyway, yeah, what I said about LA last week is still true. They have a lot of really young guys, and then they have a few old guys. No one in between. I think after these old guys leave in the next few years, they'll be a really young team. So I think they got a few more years to start rebuilding, get that young fire in them, and actually start making runs in the playoffs. But I think the Oilers are a lot like the Maple Leafs. It's due time, especially with stars like Draisaitl, McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the Oilers series to take. I think they've been showing off their offense well in the past 2 games, and I think they'll keep showing their offense well. I think the LA Kings will still win a game, win one more game just because of how bad the Oilers defense can be sometimes. But I'm going to take the Oilers in 6 now.
Yeah, what's making this series competitive is that the Oilers defense is very porous, and that Kopitar and Danault are such good defensively, such good centermen, that it's making it harder for McDavid and Draisaitl to really get going like they do. But on the power play, it's been curtains. I mean, that Oiler power play is really strong.
Lethal.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's
back there too. Oof.
Yeah.
Kane had a hat trick. They put up 8 goals a couple games ago. Oof.
I mean, really? It's lethal. It might be even better than the Avs power play, which is really
cool. Yeah, those 2 are great. They definitely also, like we said, have the pressure to win a series. I think they're going to win this. I think 6 is fair. Maybe the Kings get another one just with Quick and Kopitar grinding one out. But this is a pretty good series. I'm happy these 2 teams matched up. It gives everyone a little taste of this, and hopefully that they can figure something out with McDavid going forward. Maybe they can make a run. Who knows?
I agree.
So that's going to wrap it up for us here. We're going to send it back to Matt, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys so much for those hockey updates. And giving a quick update right now, we're going over to NASCAR. That's right over at Darlington Raceway. We have a race going on at the moment, and it turns out we actually might have just finished with 1 lap to go. We've got Joey Logano in first place. Tyler Riddick is in second, about 0.6 seconds off Logano, and William Byron also about a full second away from Logano. Looks like they're in the final lap right now, so we'll see who finishes that. And that is your final right there. That's right, Joey Logano wins it. Darlington Raceway, pretty good race it seemed like, neck and neck to the very end, and just a really good race for NASCAR fans out there. So over with that though, I'm going to hand it over to the basketball unit with Ben and Tim.
What's going on, Tim?
Ben, been a minute.
I know. We've missed each other the past few weeks, and we've been on, but not together in a little bit. But lots happened since we've been on together.
Yeah, we're right in the thick of it in the second round. Some really fun second round series. I believe we have no 3-0 series.
Nope, no, not a single one, which honestly is a little bit of a shock to me, especially in the 1-4 series over on the East and West. But yeah, I mean, it's making for some great series and great games down the stretch, and yeah, it's going to be a good finish to these series, and then we're getting into the conference finals. So
yeah, so I figure we go over each of the series, and we can start with the one that just had an update about an hour ago. The Mavs take down the Suns in Game 4. Series is tied at 2 games. Chris Paul had one of those games, a couple days after turning 37 years old, fouled out really early. I think he had 5 fouls, and it wasn't even the fourth quarter yet.
Yeah, I know he had 4 before the half, and it was about 8.5 minutes when he fouled out. But yeah, it was rough. I mean, some of the fouls were questionable, but that's how basketball is. Sometimes you don't get the calls. Sometimes the calls go against you, and Chris Paul found his way on the bench with 8.5 minutes left in the game. So it definitely hurt them when he was on the bench there.
And if I'm Monty Williams, and I know that I got one of the best backup point guards in the league with the resurgence of campaign, I also got a superstar 2 guard in Devin Booker. I mean, I'm thinking about taking Chris Paul out when he's got 3 fouls in the first half.
Yeah, it was, and the tough part is a lot of the fouls were just Chris Paul fighting for the ball. He's just going after it, really digging in. But a lot of times, especially when you got 3 fouls, everybody knows how smart Chris Paul is. But this was just one of those games where he couldn't stop fouling, and Monty Williams. Is there a question there now of what are you doing? What are you really game planning here? Because campaign, he can go out and get you some buckets pretty easily for a couple minutes. He doesn't have to be playing the whole game, but he's just, like you said, a solid backup who can go in. He can make some plays, and then you got Devin Booker, Devin Booker had a great first half, kind of slowed down a little bit in the second half, but still had a good game. So it is a little bit of a question mark, especially with it being CP3 and how important he is to that rotation. To see Monty Williams keep him in there for that long, and especially when he's struggling with fouls, but ended up hurting him in the end of the game, and now a series is tied 2-2.
Yeah, and in my opinion, good for Dallas for getting 2, evening it up, but I think this is still over because everything is going Dallas's way, right? The foul calls in this game, they couldn't miss from 3. I saw a tweet that said Dorian Finney-Smith and Wesson, because I think he hit 8 threes.
Yeah, he had 8 threes, 24 points, all on threes. All of his points were on threes. So that's even the crazier part to me.
I don't know if that's going to happen 2 more times. And that's the only way they win a game, right? The obvious way they win another game is Luka has 60. Because really, outside of Jalen Brunson, this version of Spencer Dinwiddie is not a player I can count on anymore. It's Luka and Jalen Brunson. Credit to them for getting all this output from guys like Maxi Kleber, from Reggie Bullock, who, he couldn't crack the Lakers roster that first year LeBron was there when it was just LeBron and the young guys, and has had a career resurgence here in Dallas. But, man, not having Tim Hardaway Jr. hurts, because I think with Tim Hardaway Jr., another guy who can score, this is a real series. Because the Suns just smell like a regular season team.
Yeah, and I was very high on the Suns coming into this whole playoff, saying I think they're going to sweep through it. And it is a credit to Dallas, especially coming into a series that a lot of people didn't even think they'd be there. People didn't think they'd even get past Utah. And now they're here playing Phoenix. They go down 2-0, and they now fight back to tie it up at 2. And I talked about it all year with Luka. They have 3 guys who average double digits throughout this year, if you don't count Tim Hardaway Jr., since he's been out since January. But it's unbelievable that this Mavs team is doing as well as it is, and even in this series at all. So I don't know if is it more of a credit to Dallas, or is it more saying, hey, Phoenix, you guys got to pick it up. Are you guys going to be just one of those regular season teams that can't get the job done in the playoffs? And it's not like they have that many more chances. Maybe they won't even have a chance after this, because Chris Paul could retire after the season. We don't know. But he is getting older. He's one of the best players on that team. So does it say more about the Suns, or does it say more about Dallas? It's kind of a big question to me there.
I saw a graphic, I think it was before game 3, and it's Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton. And I'm like, all right, Hall of Famer, All-Star, number 1 overall pick. Then it goes to Dallas, and it's Luka, right? One of the best players on planet Earth. And then second-round pick, Jalen Brunson, and guy who's been on the team for 2 months, Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yep.
this series shouldn't be close. It should have ended an hour ago. Like, this should have been a sweep. Dallas, they're a 4 seed because they have Luka, right? But other than Luka, this is not a very good basketball team,
Nope.
right? And the world tried to tell us Jason Kidd was a bad coach. And look at him now. He's got these dudes who can't defend playing defense. And that was always the thing with Jason Kidd. Those Bucks teams always played defense. Those Nets teams always played defense. They just couldn't get over the hump. But that was a long time ago. We're talking the last time Jason Kidd was the head coach was like, what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, around 4 or 5. Yeah.
I mean, he's got guys like Jalen Brunson, who's 6'1", playing defense. Luka's still the odd man out there. He doesn't play a lot of defense, but I don't really want Luka picking up fouls anyway.
I will say that even though Luka's the worst defender on the floor most of the time for Dallas, I mean, they've taken huge steps throughout this year defensively, not even just as a team, but with Luka. I mean, Luka, yeah, he's still kind of a liability on that side, but I don't think it's that bad to say that he can get the job done against, I mean, maybe not against superstars like Devin Booker or whoever, but he can get the job done against the third, fourth guy on any given team. But yeah, I mean, they finished the year 6th defensively in defensive efficiency, and you looking at this roster again,
no defenders,
not a single one.
No rim protectors.
Yep.
And
I mean,
one guy who can play defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you can even rebound that much either. It's rebounding, defense are the two things that on paper you're like, how are they getting the job done in either of these categories? Because they don't really have a dominant big man. They don't have a 4 out there that can really go out and make a huge difference, and they're still somehow getting the job done. So I think a lot of the credit, yes, it goes to Luka, but yeah, Jason Kidd has been overlooked this year a lot, and I've been saying it. This team is not good. This Mavericks team is not good. It really isn't. And they made that trade with getting rid of Porzingis at the deadline, and I didn't even think it was that great of a move. And then all of a sudden, they do make it into the 4th seed in the West, by the way. That's the other thing. It's not like it was the East a couple of years ago where it's a weak conference and teams that can slide up to 4, 5, 6, and they're not good teams. The Western Conference is still a very, very good conference. It's still the better conference, in my opinion. And for them to come into these to the playoffs as a 4 seed with 3 guys scoring double digits, and it's not like it's mind-boggling to me because of the fact that you're right. I mean, it's a coach that everybody said can't coach, players that people say are problems in the locker room. Dinwiddie, he was there in Washington for what, a month, and then they say that he's the issue in Washington, and that's why he got traded. I mean, it is a remarkable thing that they're even tied 2-2. But with it being tied 2-2, I'm not that convinced anymore that it will go easily to the Suns because of the fact of how they've let Dallas back into the series, and it's not in good ways. It's by picking up fouls when you shouldn't need to pick, or you don't need to pick them up, or just questionable decision making by Monty Williams not bringing Chris Paul out when he should be out, knowing that you guys will have time to come back in this game. So it's going to be an interesting series going back to Phoenix. I think that Phoenix will still win the series just because of a home court advantage. But if this was the other way, where we were going back to Dallas twice, I might think a little different. But I mean, it's definitely a crazy thing that they're even tied 2-2 in the series.
Yeah, it really feels like the Suns have dropped the ball here. And look, yes, they made it to the NBA Finals. And I'm not a big fan of criticizing runs based on injuries and all that. But the reality of the situation is they beat the Clippers in 6 in the Western Conference Finals. 2 of those wins came by, I think, a point or 2 points. So it easily could have been 4-2 the other way without Kawhi Leonard.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, that's and look, they let a hampered Giannis have one of the greatest finals of all time. And I think Giannis talked about it a couple weeks ago where he opened up about his injury and he was like, "Oh yeah, one bad turn and I was done." Right? Like we're headed for surgery and missing most of the next season.
I think the number one thing that I'm seeing with the Suns right now is you just said number 1 pick DeAndre Ayton. Where is that number 1 pick? Because I am not seeing it. I'm seeing Chris Paul I mean, he's going out there, he's getting the points he needs. CP3, yeah, he had a bad game this game, but he has not played bad this series. He's played pretty well, in my opinion. But DeAndre Ayton really needs to pick it up, especially against a team like Dallas, where they do not have the rim protection. They don't really have the big men that should be competing with Ayton. And now it's starting to make the question, Ayton and what type of player he is, because if he can't step up in the series and really dominate the next 2 games to finish off Dallas, it's going to be a question of, is Ayton the problem on that team, or what is the problem on that team that can't get the job done? So it's going to be an interesting series, the rest of the series, but I just got to see the star players step up a little more. Ayton's the biggest one to me.
Yeah, and speaking of a star player who stepped up, Joel Embiid playing through a whole bunch of injuries right now for the Philadelphia 76ers, making a heroic comeback in Game 3. Didn't statistically play very well, but I think just the fact that he was on the floor allowed guys like Maxey and Harden to really get into a groove. Because back in Miami, I mean, they were dogging those dudes with Embiid off the floor. I mean, 2 and 3 defenders at those guys all the time. It's why you see a guy like Tobias Harris was unstoppable in Game 1 and 2. And he kind of continued that in Game 3. And the Sixers were very fortunate because they didn't play a great game. They won by 20, and they played like crap. I mean, but they got the Miami Heat on a day where the Miami Heat looked like the worst team in basketball. Wow. If Jimmy had 33. Do you know what the rest of the team shot?
I saw the stat, but it's escaping my mind right now. So go ahead and tell me.
15 for 55, which, by the way, and like 5 of those are Tyler Hero.
Mm-hmm.
Because he hit a couple big shots in the third quarter when the Heat really kind of took control of the game, and even they had pretty much trailed by 10 the whole first half, cut it to a little bit, and then they had a nice run in the third quarter, and then just nothing after that. I mean, this was an ugly, ugly game, which you expect the Heat to win. And I'll tell you something, I don't like complaining about officials. I think it's stupid because they're humans. And I thought the whole Embiid and Harden, all they do is foul hunt all game. I'll be with you, I thought it was nonsense. And then I watched them play. Embiid, not as much. I guess and it's not full Embiid right now, so he's not driving aimlessly to the bucket as much as he does. But James Harden, I mean, I'm a big James Harden defender, but then I got to watch him closely. I mean, he's hooking dudes' arms while he's driving to the cup. And it's like, you're an MVP, man. Like, you got to be able to go out and score. And credit to him, he hit a couple big ones. I think the story of this game is Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah. I mean,
what a third quarter.
I think Tyrese Maxey is proving that he could be a big time player in this league. Maybe not, Luka style or Trae Young style, but he can be a very, very good player, very good starter in this league. But back on the James Harden point, this year they wanted to really cut down on those ticky-tack fouls, the offense is just drawing it, and it's not really a foul, but the offense makes some crazy move and it looks like a foul. And I think that is hurting James Harden this year because it's got in his head early on. He struggled early on, started to put it together again, and now again, he really isn't being James Harden that we know and that we've seen. We're not seeing that MVP James Harden anymore. And it's a little concerning to me for Philly. I mean, you obviously have Maxey taking some of the pressure off, and Embiid's there, who's the main scorer. But James Harden, I've never really been too big of a fan of his game. I mean, I really don't like watching him play because, like you said, it is frustrating to watch this guy play. I mean, he hooks everybody. He tries to draw fouls all the time. So yeah, I mean, on Philly's side, they got lucky. I mean, they really did get lucky. If they lose this game, which honestly they probably should have, even because they didn't even play that well, and Miami just played that bad, this series would have been over real quick. I think this was the game that saved them, but I still don't think that they have a shot in this series. I think Miami's going to come back, especially after shooting that bad. They're going to want to get revenge in the next game, and they're going to go up 3-1, and then, I mean, Embiid makes a big difference, yeah, but it's not like the offense went crazy when he was there that game. They only scored 99 points, I believe. So it's not like the offense was going crazy. So I think this series is still done. I think Miami will still move on, go to the Eastern Conference Finals. But yeah, Joel Embiid, he makes a big difference. But is it that big of a difference in this type of series? That's the question I have.
Yeah, I think the biggest point for both teams today is open shots. Miami couldn't make them. Philly was making them. I think it's going to come down to that. I hate that this is also a case. Officiating is going to be big today. Scott Foster, known for not blowing his whistle very much, especially when James Harden is involved. He's going to be the lead official today. We know Miami likes to play physical defense. Wasn't working last game because they were getting a lot of calls. A lot of those, not even shooting fouls, just a lot of those on the floor fouls, put him in the bonus, stuff like that. I think that's going to be a big thing to watch. Embiid can barely look into the light because he's still definitely concussed. I want to see if he's progressed a little bit. But we do have 2 more series to talk about. This one just hit home for me. We're about to go to your side of the pond now. Bucks at Celtics. Dramatic finish in game 3 up there in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough one to watch because also the play worked for Marcus Smart at the end of that game. They were down 3. He made the first free throw, and then he threw it off the rim, and he got the rebound. They had about 3 or 4 chances. And again, it's one of those situations where you hate to blame the rest, but there might have been a little foul in there somewhere.
Oh, and that foul was definitely a shooting foul.
Oh yeah. That's the other one. That was the other one. Is Marcus Smart was going up to shoot that ball, and that's something that the NBA has tried to fix this year, but it's overly fixed now. I feel like where they're not calling stuff that should be shooting fouls. But I mean, it was good to see a close game in this series for once. I mean, the first 2 games, it was like Milwaukee really kind of held the whole game and held on for the whole game, and then Boston, we all know, game 2 they shot the lights out of the building. But yeah, I mean, this was a pivotal game of the series. You're back in Milwaukee. Boston needs to take a game, but where was Jason Tatum really? He wasn't that big of a factor. I mean, the 2 leading scorers for Boston were Jaylen Brown and Al Horford. And if you're counting on Al Horford, who's 36, 37 to be your second leading scorer against the reigning champs, you're not going to win many of those games. And I was even shocked it was as close as it was, looking at the stats and seeing also that Giannis had 42 points. So we can also put to bed the fact that Grant Williams can't stop him. He may have had 1 good game against him, but Grant Williams cannot stop Giannis. Nobody can stop him 2 times in a row, at least. So, I mean, I think this will be the best series of this round. I think it will continue to be. I think we'll see a lot of the rest of the games be very close games. And I think the Celtics are lucky that Chris Middleton's not playing. So it's going to be a good one
for Boston, right? Obviously, Tatum's a great player, a top 10 player on the planet. But when you're going up against those top 2 and 3 players on the planet, you know, the aliens of the world, things have to go your way. Like, you can't play against them and have things not go your way. Like, you're not going to win those games. So Tatum struggles, and then they have that horrible call there at the end, which things were going their way because I don't know if you knew this. The Bucks didn't shoot a free throw the final 17 minutes of the game.
I didn't notice
that. I misread that. Apparently, the Bucks did not shoot a free throw the final 17 minutes of the game. I want to double check that because that definitely doesn't feel right. But if that's true, you had everything you needed except your guy didn't really show up. And credit to Tatum for staying aggressive. He was still able to put some big buckets there in the 4th quarter. But Giannis has 42. Drew Holiday's been able to get going a little bit, which is definitely troublesome. Grayson Allen got shoved to the floor by Grant Williams, which is always fun to see. But I think you're right. This is going to be the best series by a country mile. This is definitely going 7. I would lean Celtics in 7 because when it goes back to Boston, I don't see Tatum having another shooting night like this. And Giannis is going to have to score 50 if they want to win because I'm not going to consistently count on Drew Holiday, especially if Brook Lopez is going to be this woefully inconsistent too.
Yeah, and especially against a defensive team like the Celtics. I mean, a lot of times you're not going to get those games. I mean, you're going to only really have to rely on Giannis, just like the Celtics are going to have to rely on Brown and Tatum. I don't know. I mean, I don't know really if you obviously can't stop Giannis, but can you stop Drew Holiday for the next however many games that you need to stop him, because that's going to be the big key point for the Celtics in this series. It's not going to be if Brown or Tatum, one of them are going to have a good game, and then somebody off the bench or Marcus Smart or Grant Williams, whoever it is, will have another good offensive game. So it's really just going to come down to if the Celtics can stop everybody but Giannis, because you can't stop Giannis, you just can't. And if you can stop everybody else, yeah. If you can stop everybody else, that's the only way that I think the Celtics have a shot in the series. But yeah, I mean, if it goes 7, I'm gonna lean Boston because of the home court advantage and partly because I might be a little biased. But yeah, it's the best series in the whole second round, and I think this is going to be the winner of the Eastern Conference. Is the winner of the series.
I think so too. Love the Heat, but they're a little too inconsistent for me. Rely too much on role players. This is my problem with the Heat. But a series that's been fun, but just so much controversy, has been Grizzlies and Warriors. Warriors blow the doors off the Grizzlies in Game 3, and now there's questions about Ja Morant. Look, the Grizzlies remind me a lot of the Bengals. The internet wants you to love them, but they're just really unlikable to me. And I mean, I did like them, but look, you're the 2 seed. You're supposed to stomp the 7 seed. You shouldn't need 4 fourth-quarter comebacks by double digits to beat them and then start dancing on their logo after you do it. You are the 2 seed. Like, if anything, they accomplished something. They got 2 games, including one in your building, right? Yep. And then to go up against Golden State, right? Champions, right? Guys that have been there and done that, and you hang with them for 2 games, and you head back to their building tied up, and you're complaining about Jordan Poole swiped at Ja's knee. I mean, you watch it in slow motion, sure, it looks intentional, but watch it in real time, it's like this much contact.
Yeah,
the Grizzlies need to focus on basketball right now, because on the court, they got blown out of the water. They were shooting 50% at halftime. Ja had made 5 threes in the first half, and the game wasn't close. It was a double-digit deficit.
Yeah, I will say the one thing about this series I mean, you saw it with the Warriors even in Game 2, Steve Kerr saying that they're playing dirty. This isn't physical, this is dirty. It's basketball. I think this is the number 1 series that people are looking at every little thing, but in reality, it's basketball. Things are going to happen. You're going to get your leg pulled on accident sometimes. You're going to get a hard foul every once in a while. And yes, there have been some plays that might be dirty or might not be basketball motions, but that's the NBA. Half the fouls you see aren't even because they're accidental. It's because they grab the person or whatever they do. And just to see both sides kind of saying, oh, well, they're doing this, it's just play basketball. And that's the reason the Warriors are up in the series right now, is because they've been there. They understand you just need to go out and play basketball. You need to win. And that's it. And the Grizzlies, I understand that it's Ja. But if it wasn't Ja, would it be this big of a deal? That move? Probably not as big of a deal. But it might hurt them coming Game 4, because I do see a lot of reports saying Ja's not going to play. Oof. He's looking unlikely to play tomorrow. So, I mean, I get it changes the game, but again, it's basketball. I mean, these guys have been playing.
If Ja doesn't play, the Warriors are going to run him off the court.
Oh, yeah. And
we haven't been on since the playoffs, so we haven't been able to talk about number 13 for the Memphis Grizzlies, Jaren Jackson. Great talent. Unbelievable talent. 6'11", probably the best shot blocker in the world. Can shoot, can go coast to coast. But, oh, my God, you've been in the NBA for 3-4 years already. He doesn't know how to play defense. He tries to block everything. So guess what? 4 times these playoffs, he's already fouled out.
Yeah.
He's got 4 games with less than 30 minutes.
Yeah, and I think this is for the Grizzlies. It is proving what everybody thought, and it's that they're just too young. And that's showing with Jaren Jackson Jr., where, yeah, like you said, he's a great player. He's a great, great player. But he needs to now learn, especially come playoffs, you have to play and step up and be even better than you are in the regular season if you want to win. And you're seeing a lot of the guys on the Grizzlies not stepping up. I mean, it seems like it's Ja or that's it. If Ja's not there, like you just said, if Ja's not there tomorrow, it won't be a game. It won't be even worth watching.
Over by halftime.
Yeah, and especially against a team like the Warriors. They have two of the greatest shooters ever. They have Jordan Poole, who a lot of people thought should have been most improved player this year. They have Draymond Green, who, yeah, you might not be able to put points up, but he doesn't need to put points up on this team. He needs to play defense, get rebounds, and pass the ball, and that's the three things that Draymond can actually do on the court. But I think the series is over regardless. I think the Warriors are going to win the series no matter what, whether Ja plays tomorrow or he plays game 5, whatever. Even if he plays every game from here on out, I still think the Warriors have too much talent, too much experience, and honestly, a little better coaching right now. And I think the Grizzlies might be the team. We were just talking about the Suns being a regular season team. Maybe the Grizzlies are that regular season team that just can't get it done. But I mean, they are young. We'll be able to see them a lot coming up the next few years, but this year just does not seem like the year for them.
No, and I do think the Warriors probably beat whoever comes out of the other series. So that's going to be all for us here. By the next time we get on, we may have a couple of conference finals matchups to talk about. Had a great time with you, man.
Yeah, of course. Always a pleasure talking basketball with you, and we'll be back next week with some more updates and more news. So
see ya.
See ya.
Thank you guys for the insight there on the NBA playoffs. Obviously, a lot of people are very interested on some of the old teams getting back into it, like the Golden State Warriors, as the boys were just talking about. Seems like one of those dominant teams that could make a run for it. But flipping over, I want to talk about baseball here, and specifically college baseball. The Kentucky Wildcats were able to defeat the number 1 ranked Tennessee Vols in their series this past weekend. This is the first SEC series loss for Tennessee on the season, and an unranked Kentucky team really were able to keep it strong and get the first 2 wins of the series. And like I said, the first series for Tennessee to fall under this season. So, really big upset there. I still think Tennessee will probably remain in the top 3, top 2, possibly top 1, be the number 1 seed still, just because of how dominant they have been all year. So just a little update there for NCAA baseball. And now we're going to take it over to football, and I got some guys joining me. How we doing, gentlemen?
Doing great. Thanks for having me hop on football. I'm always a pleasure to be here. And Shane, it's first time I'm on with you, I believe.
Yeah,
so
I believe so too.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little football. I'm ready.
Well, last time we had a trio going, it was pretty entertaining. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah, so maybe we'll have to do this more often. Just have the trios go for each sports subject. But getting into it right away. Today we got some pretty cool NFL news to get over, and one of the biggest stories right now is DeAndre Hopkins obviously getting suspended for 6 games to start the regular season. And, he getting suspended for a failed PED test. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on this right off the bat? I mean, is 6 games a little too much for what happened? What are you guys feeling?
Shane, you can go ahead first.
Yeah, so I feel like obviously we don't know the specifics of what he tested positive for. We probably won't until I know his team and himself actually said that they're trying to figure out exactly what to or how it happened. So once they determine that, I know they said they're going to make that public. Hopefully that's not too far from now. But with PEDs, like obviously the NFL, especially a league where there's so much contact involved and just how physical the sport is, you can't really allow any type of this stuff happening because it's just guys are already so big, strong, fast now. The injuries are already kind of rampant, especially last year. We had a lot of them. You can't really let them get away with it. I don't know the extent of it. I don't know if it was one of those things where it's just kind of like a supplement that's banned or what it is. I'm assuming it's something like that, maybe something he was taking to help with his recovery from his injuries last year. But this is pretty standard, so I don't think it's anything like catastrophic or crazy, but should be what he should have gotten in this situation.
Yeah, it's always a tough situation when it comes to PEDs and suspending people because again, a lot of times you don't know what it is, and you saw even D-Hop went out and said, He always watches what he puts in his body. He doesn't really know how this happened. But I'm looking at it right now in the comments. It's a perfect example. 6 games for PEDs, yet a whole season for gambling. It's just somebody's got to make it make sense in the NFL. And it's just constantly you see guys get suspended or whatever, and you always see the comparisons to other things, whether it's domestic abuse or PEDs or gambling. It's PEDs affect the game a lot more than somebody gambling. I'm just going to say that.
It does.
For somebody to get over double the amount of games, it's kind of ridiculous to me. So that's really the only thing I got to say is it's always questionable when you see how many games people are suspended for.
Yeah, and especially for a guy who's considered one of the top wide receiver in the leagues, face for that position in the league too. Yeah, it is kind of like concerning. Obviously, we don't know the certainty of like what he was taking directly yet at the time until that information comes out. Our minds can think whatever they want to, and like you said, I think anything that directly increases productivity in the body compared to throwing some money on a football game. It's really kind of uncertain of how they do their operations when it comes to suspensions and fines and all this. It's really just there's really nothing in the book about how they go about and do it. For me, 6 games, I think it's fair, but then again, we don't see this happen too often.
Yeah, that's rare.
And as of right now, I think they're already going to be in a tough position to start off the season, at least the Cardinals. But losing him, it's just one of those big factors. And I think the first 6 games is going to be rough. Obviously, Kyler Murray, they don't really know what's going on there right now at the moment. A little uncertainty there. This doesn't help, the culture, at least in the building. So it's kind of interesting to see develop. And obviously when more news comes out, we'll get an understanding of what's actually going on there.
I will say real quick, I do know there are a few rumors spreading around saying Dez Bryant could be somebody to watch going to the Cardinals.
I did see that. And somebody even mentioned OBJ, but I'm thinking, he's still got his ACL injury.
He's gonna miss time too. Yeah,
exactly. So
it's tough.
Didn't they just trade for Hollywood Brown?
They did. Yeah, he's going to be the de facto number 1 for at least the time being. Yeah, at the start of the season. So.
And, obviously they've, they got to get going with their quarterback in the direction that they want to go through with him down the road. Obviously, the number 1 wide receiver being out, we're kind of, iffy on Hollywood being that number 1. Can he handle that pressure? It should be pretty interesting to see what these coaches start to do and start to game plan for the training camp coming up and seeing what guys will be able to step up. But so with that segment being done, we've got another player in the news here, and that's Tyron Matthew going to the New Orleans Saints, making his return home. He had a pretty nice deal too, for almost a 30. Oh, I think he's going to be 30 in a couple of weeks here or months. But anyways, he gets a 3-year deal worth $33 million. And, the guy's done it all. He's won a Super Bowl already. He's an all-pro safety. And now he's going back home to the Superdome. And man, I think this is just a good signing for him as a just as a person more than it is like the player aspect of it. He gets to go back home, put on his home team Saints uniform, and just kind of possibly end his career where he probably started playing football when he was just a little kid. So I think it's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, I also think it's funny that he pairs him back up with Sorensen back there. It's the same exact safety tandem as the Chiefs had. And everybody loves to pick on Sorensen, but when it comes to the Honey Badger, everybody knows what he does. All pro, Pro Bowler. He's one of the best in the game. But the other thing this whole contract does is, being a Bills fan, I looked at this a little more, but Poyer's up for a contract. It sets the market for those type of players. In 3 years, $33 million. So that's looking, you could start seeing maybe Poyer get a contract like that. Other safeties get similar contracts when they start getting up there into the 30s, 31, 32. But for Tyron Matthew and the Saints, I don't think it really changes much about the Saints when it comes to where they're going to end up in the playoff run or whatever. Still don't think they're a playoff team. But I mean, it's good for him. It's always a good story to see guys go back to where their hometown and play some football for the team that they probably always dreamed of playing for. So good for Tyron Matthew. Good for the Saints, I guess, but doesn't change too much, I think, when it comes to actually playing the game.
It's hard to say because the Saints, everything they've done this offseason points to them at least thinking they can compete, right? They may move up for a receiver in Chris Olave. They take a tackle to replace Armstead. They bring Winston back and don't take a young quarterback to try to compete with him or replace him. Like, they seem to think that they can compete in a weak NFC. And, maybe they can, maybe they can't. A lot of it will be determined by what Winston's able to do if he's able to play a full season. But this move makes a lot of sense when you consider how they've approached the rest of their offseason. So makes sense for the team, makes sense for him. Good contract. I do think this could be kind of where you're looking at, like a guy with Poyer and some of the other older safeties once they reach that point, if they're still playing well and getting that $10-11 million range. So,
yeah, obviously I don't think they're in the position to possibly, really win their division.
Right.
They're going to have a hard time itself, just from some of the other teams in there and the other talent. And I don't think they really have the quarterback to lead them yet. It's going to take them a little bit, a couple years, but hey, with him being there for 3 years, it maybe they start looking for a quarterback down the road, or via trade. Obviously, Jameis Winston going back there, but it's just he's not enough. We haven't seen anything out of it. But if anything, I know, start with defense, get some leaders there. It could help out for the long haul or the long run, maybe for future young players coming in. He's honestly, you got to look at him as, for example, the Bills taking Von Miller, right?
Yep,
bring him in and have the young guys learn from him. I think he's a really good character guy, good guy to have in the locker room. We may not see them win right away, but if anything, he's going to get those young guys ready to go. So happy for him to go home, but I think the Saints did get a pretty good deal. Maybe not, the deal to possibly win right away, but I think it was necessary. So good on them, and good for Tyron Matthew there. And then I want to go into our third segment here before we get into our main segment. And that's kind of a funny one. Odell Beckham Jr. tweeting out saying Deebo Samuel is going to the New England Patriots, having some fun on Twitter. But, it seems like these two were going back at each other from time to time. But, man, did everybody else not think this was funny. They were just pissed. Patriots fans especially, too.
I can understand why.
I was there laughing. Like, everybody's like, oh, my gosh, can you believe Deebo's going to the Patriots? I'm like, no, he's not.
No, it's OBJ
first
thing.
off, it's coming from Odell, so it's not authentic. As soon as Scheffner puts it out, then I'll believe it. But as of right now, I think it's just pretty funny how these two go back at it. But what are your guys' thoughts? Do you think this is okay to put out there, or do you guys think, maybe not do this?
I mean, I think it's harmless at the end of the day. Like, it doesn't honestly, it doesn't do anything. It's not like he said a bunch of things, in motion, or made people question it. Like, anyone who actually had anything to lose by believing this or looking into this or reporting it, they weren't in a position to know what's going on anyway. They were just looking at what OBJ said. Odell says that, and no, he's just bored. He's probably not sure what he wants to do yet, team-wise, figuring out what he wants to do. He's just bored on Twitter, just wanting to mess with Deebo. It's harmless at the end of the day, but I understand why, Patriots fans especially would be a little bit upset about that. But we know the Patriots aren't going to, they're not going to be the one to do that. They're we know that that's not really what they're going to do. So I think at the end of the day, Odell's just screwing around and having a good time, so.
Yeah, I didn't really have a problem with it. I know I was talking to somebody about this, and they were like, "Oh, doesn't that deserve kind of a suspension? That's kind of messing with the league." And I wholeheartedly disagreed.
No, that's
it's not like he's tampering. If he was if he was on the Patriots saying
right, exactly,
some other stuff, that maybe, but no, I think it's all just fun and games. It's one of those things that, it's Twitter. You see it all the time with people doing it.
I think it's fun too. You get to see their personalities and how they joke around with each other, even if they're not on the same team. It's obviously, during off seasons, I bet these guys train with each other all the time, and they're just pulling each other and we can get a pretty good kick out of this one if I put that out there. So I don't know. I think it was pretty funny. I think obviously anybody who's got pretty much common sense would know it's probably not real. So
Right, coming from Odell.
yeah, but no, I think it's perfectly fine to put out there. No issues, and if anything, it pisses off some Patriot fans. So I'm okay with that any day
Yeah,
of
I'm
the
sure
week.
you guys are just fine with that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
Oh, yeah.
I'm never gonna be afraid to say the same thing about that.
Yeah.
No worries.
I think everybody's in the same boat.
Pretty much everybody, I feel like. So
If you're not a Pats fan,
that's about
everybody.
it.
Yeah,
I think you're either a Pats fan or you hate them.
yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
One or the
Pretty
other.
much. All right. Well, let's get into the last segment, our main segment of the day.
Mhm.
And I kind of want to go through the NFC today and their divisions. I want to get your opinion on what you think the predictions for each division is going to look like, who's going to have an opportunity to possibly overthrow the victors of each division from last season. And let's start off with the NFC North. Obviously, we've got the Bears, Lions, Green Bay Packers, and Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, the Packers won it last year. In my opinion, right now, no one is going to be able to overcome the Green Bay Packers at this moment in time, at least for this season. I do like the movement that Detroit was heading into draft-wise. I think they did pretty good there. Chicago, kind of in the middle there. Maybe year 2 of Justin Fields gets a little bit better. I don't think it's enough right now. And then obviously Minnesota. I mean, as long as they got Kirk Cousins, it's going to be 50-50 all day long. So I think he's Mr. Even Steven. But no, I mean, Green Bay is just too elite right now. I don't think anybody's really going to even be able to put up a fight against them going forward, even though they did lose Devontae Adams in the offseason here as he got traded to the Las Vegas Raiders. But as long as you got the 2-time back-to-back MVP, yeah, it's an easy ticket.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree too with you there. I don't think anybody catches the Packers. Vikings would be the only one that you think have a shot at it. The Lions, as much as I loved what they did, and I think they'll finish above the Bears in the division. It's still they got Jared Goff as their quarterback. I don't think Jared Goff's gonna. I don't think he's gonna beat out Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. The only way he does it is if Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Thielen carry him there. And even with all that talent, Kirk Cousins still can't get the job done. So I think Packers easily in this division, Vikings coming second with the Lions, and then the Bears following. So that would be my order.
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay is still, despite losing Adams, having Rodgers there, he's going to make enough happen with that core. I mean, Jones is probably going to get more involved in the passing game out of the backfield again. He'll find a way to use Christian Watson's skill set as a rookie and get him involved enough. It's going to be enough to at least stay whole. I don't think they're going to be as good of a team overall, obviously, but would be surprising if they don't win at least 10, 11 games to win the division.
Yeah.
The Vikings, Kirk is 59-2 as a starter.
Even Steven.
And it's literally it writes itself, the jokes, right? Like you can't it's perfect. So until he shows something that he hasn't shown, and I don't think this Vikings team is on an upward slope right now, personally, it's just going to be too hard for any of the other teams. Like so you mentioned the Lions, so I like what they did, but they would have to have a Bengals level jump, and they do not have the quarterback to make that.
No, they do not. Yeah.
So right now Packers kind of all the way from here right now.
Yeah, I mean, pretty easy division there. It seems like,
like
one of just those cakewalks for Green Bay, which it usually is every year. But going on to the next one, we've got the NFC East. This one I think is a little bit interesting. Obviously, we got Dallas, the Giants, Eagles, and the Commanders. And honestly, I do think this one is kind of open at the moment, even though Dallas is probably the favorite, in my opinion, right now, based off of the, consistent play they've had. They've had players in the league for a while. I just think other than that, you're going to have the Eagles, and honestly, I think they're going to have the Giants knocking at the door a little bit too. The reason why I'm going to go with the Giants is I just like the guys they got and their office staff, head coach, and I like what they did in the draft. Really established some more players at the O-line to keep building, up the trenches a little bit. But the Eagles, I mean, they won the draft, I'm pretty sure. So They obviously getting AJ Brown in a trade and some other really good players. I think it's going to be. I think they have enough weapons for Hurts to do damage. We'll see if he's capable of. The only reason I'm still picking Dallas over all these other teams is just because Dak's been in the league for so many years. They've got the continuity with their other players there. So I think it's Dallas's to win, but I would not be surprised if a team like the Eagles or the Giants make a run at it.
I think for me, like kind of in the same vein, like Dallas, the Eagles, the Commanders, they're all like in the same relative area of each other, roster wise, talent wise, overall. I think giving Dallas the edge for the time being is just a safe play because they have the best quarterback in the division right now. Right. So when looking at it that way, it's easy to say Dallas is the leader for there. I do think the Eagles have the best shot of unseating them because they were able to make the playoffs last year despite having kind of an iffy start to the year. They kind of found a rhythm with how they can use Hurts. I don't think he's a long-term answer there, but you give him more weapons. Like I said, they drafted very well. The defense should be better even than last year. They have a shot to get enough wins, especially outside of the division. In the division, they always split, it feels like. This division just beats the crap out of each other. But I think they have the best chance to win their out of conference, especially and out of division schedule, and be able to win out at the end. But Dallas is still kind of the team that you want to pick them just because, again, they have the best quarterback in the division, and it's hard not to pick that right now.
Yeah, I'm actually going with the Eagles as
fair enough.
the people who win this. I like what I saw from Hurts last year, even though, like you said, it was kind of a slow start, but they found a rhythm. Now you bring in AJ Brown. You get a steal, I think, in Nakobe Dean as long as he can stay healthy, obviously, in the third round. You get a big defensive tackle to put right next to Fletcher Cox in his last year there. I think the Eagles really can do stuff here, and I think also the Cowboys never live up to what they're supposed to live up to. They're always overhyped every year, and it would be the most Dallas Cowboys thing ever to lose this division, especially the Eagles. I think the Eagles are the only one that really have a shot. Commanders, they're not coming close. I think they're the worst team in this division.
Wentz is so iffy, man. I just don't know.
I think a lot of uncertainty,
Yes, they do.
That's why I didn't even want to mention them.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. And then the Giants, I liked some of the moves they made. I think that they're heading in the right direction, but I don't think they're there.
They're probably a year or two away. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say a year or two away from definitely competing, especially Danny Dimes. I am sorry, but I'm not even
Daniel Dimmies.
Not close to being sold on him. I don't even know how many fumbles specifically it is, but I know he holds the record for like most fumbles in your first two seasons in the NFL.
Like that, yeah.
Probably the record for tripping over yourself too.
I've never seen a guy be able to run so fast a straight line, but have no idea how to actually run properly. It's really,
at least how to run, the start was unbelievable, but
right, once he gets going, he can get down the field, but like it feels like he doesn't know like how to put his feet in front of each other once he gets going. I'm like, I don't know. It's
gosh.
Yeah. So I'm going with the Eagles. I think the Eagles will win this division, and I like Hurts. I think
I can't really argue with that, honestly. So I think they would be my favorite to unseat the Cowboys if they do.
I'm still going to stick with Dallas, but either way, let's get into the NFC South here. We've got the Falcons, Panthers, Saints, and Bucks. Obviously, we were talking about the Saints a little bit, getting Tyron Matthew. Not enough. I mean, you got Brady coming back and just that, electric offense they've got there in Tampa Bay. And there's some speculations of maybe some more quarterbacks being moved down to the NFC South, particularly maybe a Baker Mayfield going to the Panthers. I don't think it's going to be enough either. They just don't have the weaponry and the overall defense to hold up, even with a team like New Orleans. And then you look at the Falcons. Obviously, we've got Marcus Mariota, probably going to be the starting quarterback. At day one. They don't have the talent either. They've got a guy who's out for the entire year due to gambling some money on his own team, which still doesn't make sense to me versus the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's really up between the Saints and the Bucks, and I think Jameis is okay. I just don't think he's got enough in him to, get over the hump or even maybe finish a full season, regular season. Even if he does play well, I think the Bucs are just going to be able to handle themselves throughout the regular season and get that, for the first division win. So I'm going to pick the Bucs here. It's always been interesting, though. It seems like even though Brady's been there for 2 years now, it seems like he's kind of struggled against the Saints,
Yes.
at least in the regular season. So, I mean, if they can get a couple wins, if they can get 2 wins or even split with the Bucs, and then depending on what their schedule is like the rest of the year, maybe they'll be there. Obviously, they were kind of there towards this past year, and look at how many quarterbacks they went through. So,
Yeah.
if they can find some consistency, I'm not counting out the Saints on this one.
I'm actually not going to count out another team, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. Even though I still think the
Ooh.
Bucs, I think the Bucs will win it. I'm going to just say that right off the bat.
Yeah.
But I'm not sold on who the number 2 team in this division is. I think if Tom Brady's not there, this is the worst division in football. But when it comes to the second seed, who might be able to take them over, I think the Falcons. I thought they finished the year pretty well. I thought that they took some strides throughout the year defensively. More notably, they took some strides. But I don't hate what they're doing. I know obviously they have Calvin Ridley, who's not going to be playing this season. But Mariota, I mean, he has been a backup for the last few years. But sometimes that's all they need. I mean, you see it in Tannehill. I mean, you kind of see it with what the Bills did with Trubisky last year. Let him sit, and then maybe he can go start somewhere else. But I don't really hate Mariota there, and especially teaching the young guy Ritter. I believe went there, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the perfect guy to teach Ritter if anybody's going to take over in Atlanta. And yeah, I think they'll have a decent chance if they can come out and use the momentum that they had to end the year last year and bring it into this year. So it's between the Falcons and Saints as the 2 seed there. I really don't think the Panthers, especially even if they get Baker Mayfield, I don't think they're a good team. And if they don't get Baker Mayfield, they'll be, I think, one of the worst teams in football. If you ask me, Sam Darnold just not the guy. So it's an interesting division. It's very interesting, but without the Bucs, it might be one of the worst divisions in football, and without Tom Brady, I think it would be the worst division in football.
Yeah, for the Buccaneers, like obviously they pretty much brought back most of their meaningful talent. Like obviously they lost Marpet to retirement, but they replaced him with Shaq Mason. They pretty much didn't lose anything of note outside of maybe Jordan Whitehead, but they have plenty of safety depth. They're going to be the team, obviously, to beat, maybe in the conference from a record-wise, at least. Like, obviously, there's other teams that can compete with them to win the conference ultimately down the road, but to just in the regular season, I'd be surprised if any team outwins them. They just have too much talent, weak division, and the only team that can challenge them, it seems like, is the Saints. And even if the Saints aren't always talented enough to where they should compete with them, something about the Saints defense, man, like Tom Brady just cannot figure it out so far since he's been there. And, maybe this year that'll change. It's kind of hard pressed to believe that. But outside of the Saints making a crazy run at the end of the season and the Bucs kind of falling off, it is kind of the Bucs division to lose at this point, really. Carolina, they can't let Sam Darnold go out there. So something's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be Garoppolo. I don't know if it's going to be Mayfield. I don't know if they're just going to say Matt Corral, hey, go for it. I doubt that just because, it's kind of crazy to do that. But if they do play him in quarterback, yeah, I think they have a shot to be even maybe worse than the Falcons just because the way he showed up after those first couple games was just atrocious. It's not even backup level. Falcons are still probably, to me, they're the least talented team in the division, which that doesn't mean they're going to be the worst team, but I think that if things don't go very well, they could end up with 2 or 3 wins. It's not going to be hard for that to happen. Especially,
it all comes down to me to Mariota. It all comes down to
I trust him more than Darnold. Obviously, that helps them a lot. It gives them, I think, a better floor than the Carolina Panthers have. But like I said, that division, it's really hard to look at any of the teams outside of the Bucs and the Saints defense specifically and go, it's a solid team. So.
I agree. All right, well, let's get into this final division here. Obviously, we're going to the NFC West. This is one of my favorite divisions to watch too. Just fun. Ever since I was a kid, just see these teams, develop and go at each other. Obviously, we got Arizona, defending Super Bowl champions, Los Angeles Rams, the San Francisco 49ers and Seattle Seahawks without Russell Wilson. Now, this one is honestly, it's very interesting. And I'm going to go kind of bold here. I think we will have a new division winner. And I think it's going to be the San Francisco 49ers. And the reason why is I think Jimmy Garoppolo will be their starter for the entire year. I think with everything that's happened, even with Debo, I just see it as, okay, this can't work. We've had too much drama going on. But if you look at their chemistry, it's been so successful in the regular season, at least to get you a division title. Obviously, the Rams kind of exploded this year with their super team and getting their quarterback in Matthew Stafford. I just really do like the 49ers entire team, though, the way they play. I like their offense, special teams, and defense, especially when you got a guy like Bosa right at the edge there making the plays when you need it, kind of just like Aaron Donald does for the Rams. I'm not sold on Trey Lance right now, and I think if they do keep Garoppolo, which it is my prediction that he will start the season and finish with the 49ers this upcoming season. And now that, Debo is going to be there next year, you got George Kittle. As long as you can get these guys healthy, you got some solid wide receivers too, like throughout the board there, like Jawan Jennings, Ayuka. Like, it is just unbelievable to watch these guys play. I think if you want to be successful right now, you play Jimmy Garoppolo over Lance, maybe have him start, have him develop a little bit more. Because, he went in a little bit this past year. He didn't look great, but obviously he's a rookie. He's getting used to it. He's getting his feet into the water a little bit there. I'm feeling real bold about this, though. I really do like the passion and physicality that San Fran always plays with. Look at what they did in the playoffs last year. I mean, obviously it's not much, but I mean, Dallas, chokes again, you could say, or you could say, hey, San Fran just played better. They were the ones who played heavier. So I think they do have enough to win in the regular season. Obviously, not winning the division this past year, they might have some easier teams to beat up on in the regular season. So I think it's a good chance of them winning the division.
Yeah, I think that it's very likely that could happen because of the fact that they're not going to be playing a first place schedule. They're pretty much their entire team is coming back, especially with the news that Samuels doesn't seem to be going anywhere. I doubt he doesn't play. I think he's not at a point where he's like, I'm just going to sit out because he knows he can't really do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, they should have a schedule that is in theory easier than the Rams. And the Rams did lose Von Miller, obviously, from that run. Lost OBJ unless he comes back, which I don't think he's going to at this point. Probably would have if he was going to. Robert Woods is, as much as he missed the back half of the season, he's not going to be there. He's been a huge piece for them for a long time. Just there's not a ton of confidence on my end that the Rams are going to be able to repeat the same level of play that they showed, especially in the playoffs last year. They're still going to be good. I still think that they have a really good shot at winning the division. But the Niners, regardless of who they have at quarterback, in my opinion, are just probably going to be a better overall team. And I'm not a Garoppolo guy, I will tell you that. I think that they've won despite him his entire time there. Watching those games, especially in the playoffs, honestly, I would have gone to Lance after the
playoffs. It seems like he struggles tremendously.
Yeah,
but
it's something's off with him in the playoffs. I remember that the Super Bowl run where he had Emmanuel Sanders wide open for a touchdown that would have made the game a lot different, and he just whiffed on it.
Yeah,
and that's what you saw. Like the Packers game, he could have put that away earlier than he did, but he whiffed on a throw to Ayuk. Same thing happened in the Cowboys game. Like, they are winning despite him. And I think with Lance, you can work through his warts because he's going to give you so much more upside on the field. And will that happen, especially if Garoppolo is on the roster week 1? I wouldn't be surprised if Shanahan stays with him because he seems to still like him despite him giving him plenty of reasons not to. Mm-hmm. But regardless of who it is, I do think they have a really good shot at winning the division.
I have a hard time not picking the Rams for a couple of reasons.
Right.
For me, when it comes to the 49ers, I think they're a very good team. I think they'll make the playoffs. They'll squeak in as one of the wild cards. It's kind of the same reasoning that I have with the 49ers as I do with the Cardinals. If they don't get off to a good start, there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of talk about those teams. If they don't start off hot, if Garoppolo even struggles even one game, I think this is his last shot. This is his last shot this year. They're not going to give him another year after this if he can't get the job done. So on top of the whole Debo thing, with Debo maybe not wanting to go anywhere anymore, because now I know he followed back the 49ers back on Instagram. Don't know.
We all know how much that matters.
Yeah. Don't know how much that means, but I mean, maybe it's showing signs of maybe they are starting to make up a little bit, and maybe he will stay there. But either way, they're going to have controversy the whole year. You're going to hear, is Trey Lance ready? Should he be the guy? Even if they're winning, I still think you'll hear Garoppolo, is he that guy? Because when they get to the playoffs, that's going to be the question. Cardinals, there's a lot of controversy around Kyler Murray asking for a big contract when what has he really done? Not really much in the NFL. And then you got
only one playoff game.
Yeah, and you got D-Hop suspended too. So there's a lot of things in this division. I mean, the Seahawks, I think it's a given, going to be one of the worst teams in football. They just
Drew Lock time.
Yeah, if you have Drew Lock as your quarterback, you'll at most win 6 or 7 games in my opinion.
You see a lot of karaoke on the sideline.
It's just, I definitely want to talk about the Cardinals and the Seahawks a little bit too, even though we didn't focus much on them like you were talking about, Ben, because the Cardinals especially have been a team that has been relying on hot starts the past 2 seasons. I mean, they were the last undefeated team in football.
Best start this past year.
Yeah, they were the last undefeated team in football. And as good as they're capable of being, when Murray's on and he's healthy, and when Kingsbury's in his bag as a play caller, like, they can be very good. Without D-Hop there, though, there's such a drastic difference in their offensive output, because so much of it goes through him, whether it's just him catching the football or taking pressure off the rest of the guys. You don't have Christian Kirk anymore. Rondale Moore's going to have to step up. AJ Green's another year older. Like, the best offensive piece they added was in the draft, and it was their number 2 tight end with McBride.
Yeah.
I just don't see that mattering a whole lot to start off the season. And yeah, Brown's there now with Hollywood Brown, but he's really been mostly a deep threat in his career, and that's as good as Murray can be in that. And he showed it in college with him at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I
don't know if that's going to translate the same way, obviously, in the NFL now, with them being different players than they were at that point in their career.
I think it's just another Christian Kirk. And honestly, I mean, you lose Christian Kirk and you put Hollywood Brown in. It's a little bit of an upgrade, but it's not
just because of the speed threat. Yeah, but that's it.
Not that massive upgrade to me.
I think this is a big year for Kyler too.
It is,
because if he's at that age now, especially in his career, where he's supposed to make these guys look good now.
Yes.
It's not all about having these star guys. Obviously it helps when you're a young kid, but if he's, wanting all this money and he wants to be paid like a big time quarterback, he better be able to deliver like a big time quarterback and make the other players around him better because of his play.
Absolutely.
If it doesn't add up, I ain't sticking with, obviously I'm going to continue to go forward, but I'm not paying him.
You see it a lot with the NFL. Controversy can kill teams. It really can.
It can.
And that's the 2 reasons it's very hard for me not to pick the Rams, because they are Super Bowl winners. They still have arguably the best receiver in football. They have Matt Stafford, who his first year out of Detroit, what does he do? He wins the Super Bowl. They
not surprising to me.
Yeah, they added Allen Robinson, right? They got some guys. Yeah, they lost Von Miller. They lost Robert Woods.
Yes.
But they still have a championship contending team. I wouldn't say they're favorites or anything like that, but they still have the talent to go that far. And to me, the Niners are the only team that really has a chance to push them and for that title. But I still don't think it will be enough, no matter how well Jimmy G plays, or even if it's Trey Lance, how well he plays, because of the fact that there's going to be controversy if both of them are on the team. It's going to be the question marks. It's going to be, is Debo happy? Is Kittle happy? What's going on with everybody else? And as much as I love Kyle Shanahan, time after time after time, in big crucial moments in games or whatever it is, he fails to make the right decision. And I still think he's a great coach. I think he's going to be a great head coach for a while. But for him to get over that hump, win the division, and make some noise in the playoffs when it comes to actually winning the Super Bowl, I know they went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, but now you're looking at this team as where are they? Where's the direction here? Is it Garoppolo? Is it Lance? Where's the direction? I think it's going to create a lot more controversy around that team.
Yeah.
Well, boys, thank you for your insight on it, and thank you for joining me for this little football segment here today. I can't wait to talk some more football with you guys, possibly down the road. Maybe we'll have to do this trio again some other time, but thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
All righty. All right. Obviously, that was our little football segment right there. Big thanks to the guys for joining me there. And one more final update we got here. We've got Formula One racing. That's right. It was in Miami today. And we have a winner. Max Verstappen is a Belgian Dutch racer, and he ended up winning today's race by about almost 4 seconds. Pretty big victory margin there. But yeah, guy sponsored by Red Bull has been one of the favorites this year in Formula One racing. Really cool to see Formula One back here in the United States too, and a good venue like Miami. So really interesting to see him get the first place seed there at Miami and the Miami Grand Prix. But with that, we're going to head it right back over to Shane here with baseball. What's up, buddy? Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, right back to it. So, not a whole lot to talk about with baseball right now. There's a couple things I definitely want to hit on that have happened over the past week or so, and also one team in particular I want to talk about. But
I'm for it.
Yeah, we got to start off with just umpiring in baseball right now, and everybody knows for years that baseball has got to have the worst officials, umpires, however they're called in whatever sport in the business. It's gotten to the point where it's taking away from the sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
At this point, the way they're acting and the way that certain officials and umpires are acting, it's just pushing them farther, like closer and closer to the robotic umps, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're going. And it's for a lot of fans who maybe didn't like the idea a couple years ago. I think a lot of them are starting
like it's a lot better than what we have right now, though.
They're starting to come around more and more, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously not like the baseball guy of this group here, but when I do watch, especially when I'm watching my Yankees and stuff, or just any other game, there's so many times without the game, and it's just consistent that you're just like, what? Like, I understand the game enough, and maybe I don't know all this like stats right off the bat compared to some of my other buddies and whatever, but I still know that there is so much screw up in this game. And it really, I mean, for a guy who enjoys watching the game and is just more about, okay, let's have the best team win, it's not happening. It's taking away from the best teams winning these games. And it's getting kind of, I'm tired of it. We want something new. We want something to change. We want them to be held accountable.
And that's where I think the biggest problem is, like, because obviously with the baseball union and with the umpires union, like, there are only certain things that technically can be done, right? And I understand that from baseball's perspective, but guys like Angel Hernandez, for example, we want to start with him. He has been consistently one of the worst strike and ball callers in the sport for quite some time. And it even goes as far as he was trying to sue them a couple years ago for not giving him World Series games as an umpire. And MLB basically had to come out and in legal ways or legal terms say he's so bad that we can't afford to put him out there on these games. Like, they had to come out and say, like, that is where we're at with some of the guys who are still umpiring. And for a while it was Joe West. Now he's talking on podcasts about how, like, oh, it's overblown. It's getting to the point where until we do robotic umps, it's probably just going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, it's also too just how, I mean, if you're just a multiple sports fan too, you see how other leagues have adapted. At least they've gotten more crucial on certain calls. Like, I know, like, for example, I know the NFL put in like a taunting, type penalty thing where they were strict on it in the preseason, right? But when it comes to regular season, they rarely throw it. Maybe
it was very few.
Maybe like once, one time or twice out of the entire week of week of football. But it's so hard for baseball because it's not there's not a whole lot you can do to change rules, especially when it comes
Yes.
to, just being inside or outside. It's hard, and everybody's got a different style.
Yes.
That's the thing too. It's a lot easier for somebody to be like, okay, I see somebody actually holding somebody in a game of basketball versus, oh, this
Right.
is my box. This is what I'm used to. So it is kind of interesting to think that we're actually at this time where we're considering, having bots perform for us down the road.
Yeah,
And it's kind of sad because if anything,
Yeah.
you want that humane, part of somebody, officiating the game.
you do. Yeah.
I just don't know how you get them to sharpen up and be
And that's
consistent
that's the
throughout
problem.
162 games.
That's the thing is it's hard. It is like that's the thing I think a lot of people don't acknowledge or don't want to talk about is like it's not that we don't think it's hard or that we think that we could do it or anything like that, but the level of inconsistency that you see from certain umpires too.
Oh, yeah.
That's really what gets me. Is like every umpire is going to be a little bit different, and that's something that teams understand and they do scouting reports for that.
It usually takes you like an inning or two to get
Right,
into,
and then you
okay,
figure it
this
out.
is
Yeah,
this
you
guy's
figure it
style,
out.
and I got it.
Right.
Yeah,
But when it's inconsistent from inning to inning, from pitch to pitch,
yeah.
that's when you have a problem. And even going beyond that, you also have the issue of umpires making the game about themselves too often. And the
Mm.
biggest one we saw recently was when MLB umpire Dan Bellino, he was the one who did the weird thing with Madison Bumgarner where he was like massaging his hand to check for
Yeah.
substances. He was just staring him down the entire time he's doing it.
Very cringy to
Yeah,
watch.
and I'm like, what
Very
is
cringy.
I always remember seeing the clip initially and not really knowing like the background of whatever was going on. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what is this guy doing? And then obviously Madison at some point's like, dude, what are you like? What is
No,
going on?
literally, he's looking down, not
Right.
looking at. He's just showing his hand, like nothing there, and the guy's just going
We're just staring. I'm
the
like,
whole time. I'm like, come on, dude.
like you can't. First of all, it's just weird to do. I don't understand what his thought process was. But then obviously Bumgarner eventually is like, all right, enough of this. And he drops a couple F bombs at him, tells him to F off, basically. Which,
Yeah.
again, is that the best way to handle that? No, but players know like they're tired of this stuff, right? Like they don't want to deal with it anymore. And he throws him out in the first inning of a game. Well, now the Diamondbacks have to go to a bullpen game to basically start a series.
Yeah.
And that's where the competitive balance becomes a problem because like you're throwing guys out who are starting pitchers in the first inning of games for something that you started it. Like, and he even apologized. Like at least he had the sense to do that. He started this problem. That's where it becomes an issue for me.
No, I completely agree what you said. Like them trying to take over the game themselves and narrate how this is going to go. I mean, come on, like let the players do that. Let the guys who train since they were little kids, and put in all these hours to be as good as they are now and be at the biggest stage. Let's sharpen up and let them play, and let's make sure that we're giving them a fair opportunity and not stealing any thunder.
Right. And I think that's, again, with the issues with that's the biggest thing. That's kind of a headline MLB the last week, unfortunately. Moving on to our second topic here, though, and this is another thing that is not really good for baseball, and I'm not going to be surprised if we see kind of a reverse course in the next, if not by the end of this year, with the next year coming up, and that's the lack of offense overall in the sport right now. And as you see here, MLB has lowest runs per game since 1981. And again, we're coming off of a few years where home runs were at their highest. Scoring was way up there. And, there still were pitchers who were able to get good stats and they were still doing well. But if you weren't one of the better pitchers in the league, you were getting shelled pretty often.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was, they were talking about was the ball juice, was this or that or whatever the case may be. Was it the approach where guys were trying to hit home runs more opposed to taking their base hits? Now you're not getting really either. You're not getting a lot of home runs. You're not getting a lot of runs, but you're also not having guys get on base or hit for average nearly as well as they were 5-10 years ago. And it's becoming, again, kind of a pitcher's league again, which some people, maybe they like that,
Well,
but
it's going to happen when you have some not some really good officiating going
right,
on.
that doesn't help either.
Obviously,
Yeah.
it doesn't help at all.
No, it doesn't. And when you factor everything in, though, MLB has to look at themselves and go, is this the direction we want to go as a league? And I think that they are tampering with the baseball yet again. You saw there's been a lot of hits recently that have been highlighted that years ago, even before the talk about juice baseballs, these hits were going out.
Mm-hmm.
And they just are dying at the warning track, or they're not getting enough juice to get into the gap.
It's so funny you say that because, like, I remember just from the start of the season, gosh, the amount of times you see a swing and you're like, I mean, for me, watching the Yankees too, you got Giancarlo Stanton,
Yeah,
right?
huge hitters.
Boom,
Yeah.
there it goes. You know, you got. I mean, I think John Sterling, play-by-play
Yes,
announcer,
that was a
he's
really
been caught multiple times
Yeah,
this year.
yes.
He's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that thing's gone. It is high. It is far. It is it's
Caught.
hot.
Yeah, the best one was like the one really early in the season, but still like
Yeah.
that's what's happening. Announcers
No,
are like
seriously,
they don't know
yeah.
they don't know what to do because they've been used to just seeing balls fly out of the yard. And again, that's more fun for the casual fan. And like as much as like I can still find enjoyment in watching the game the way it's being played because I do like pitching. I really like seeing these guys work and get their outs and everything. But you're trying to build the game back up to a certain degree and you're trying to find new fans. And most of the time, seeing the ball go out of the yard and not seeing guys just get put out 3 times in a row is more fun for people to watch. So it's
especially for a
predicament.
sport that's kind of, you know, I mean, I wouldn't. It is a sport that's easily like people will leave if it's not
Yes,
entertaining.
if it's not entertaining. Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
for once, like especially the summertime, it's hot out.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of consistent movement on the field to the point where you're looking at one place and one place only. And if it's strikeout after strikeout or whatever it may be, it's hard to keep fans in the building.
Yes, it is.
Obviously, you know, you got your true fans there, and especially when it comes to playoff time, it's electric.
Right,
obviously.
exactly.
But for such a long, grueling season, you gotta have some offensive production just to keep it going the entire year. Make it entertaining. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, man.
I mean, as much as we look back on it now and kind of malign these guys, like the most popular era for baseball was a steroid era for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, not saying I want them to do that or let people do
Good
that.
old
but,
A-Rod.
right. Like it's as much as obviously that was
Barry
a dark
Bonds.
time to a certain degree for the
Yeah.
sport. There's a reason why fans were there more than ever. I mean,
No.
the best way to replicate that without just letting guys do whatever they want to do, obviously.
I mean, who doesn't love to see a guy murder the ball outside the park, like on a day, like a weekly average? Like, yeah, we'll do that like at least 3 times a week.
It's again, like that's what baseball has to decide. Like they have to decide what direction do they want the game to go because they obviously have an impact on that with the baseball specifically. They can't force teams not to play the averages or do analytic stuff, which some people have a problem with, whatever. But they can at least decide what do they want the baseball to be like. You know, I just want them to make a decision and stick with it for more than 2 years at a time. So we'll see where they go from here. But the last thing I want to talk about is a specific team. So last time I was on, I talked about the Cincinnati Reds and how terrible they are, which unfortunately they took 2 or 3 from my Pirates, so they're obviously not that bad apparently. But I want to talk about a team that has been kind of on the team that has high expectations every year and falls off, where they have all this talents and they haven't been able to figure it out. Where so far this year they've been legit and one of the better teams in baseball, and that's the Los Angeles Angels.
Yeah, I mean, aren't they 19? Are they 19-11 now?
I don't know if they won today. I was going to
They won
double check
today?
that because they were playing when we started, but
I'm gonna
I
look
do
it
know
up.
they're either 19-11
Yeah,
or
they
18-12.
won today.
They won today.
Beat the
Perfect.
Washington Nationals 5-4.
Perfect. Yeah, so they're right now 19-11, leading their division right now, and everything's kind of working out so far. And the sad thing is that's without Ohtani repeating his success from last year so far. He's still been a good pitcher, especially. The hitting hasn't really come along fully yet, but they're getting huge contributions from guys like Taylor Ward. Now, they didn't expect anything from. Mike Trout has been right back to where we expected him to be, one of the best hitters in baseball. And just overall, like this team is pitching better than we've seen them pitch in a long time on the backs of guys that you don't really expect much from outside of maybe Syndergaard coming in as a kind of a low risk, high reward signing. Everything is coming up Angels right now for them. And frankly, if they can continue this, we might finally get to see Ohtani and Trout play in a playoff game together, and I'm just excited for that.
That'd be fun to watch. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it seems like they've been trying to work on this for a while, and I think a lot of it has to do with everybody getting healthy and staying healthy for a little bit. It is extremely early though right now.
Yes, it is for sure.
It's exciting to see for sure for a team that's been trying to turn it around or just be consistent for as long as they've been trying to do it. But it is early, but it seems like they are just in a good groove right now. It seems like everybody's having a good time. They're not stressing out. It doesn't look like.
No.
It seems like they've got that confidence up right now. And, even if they do go through some, adversity down the road here in the stretch going into the midseason and they're still, around top 10 of the league, I think they're in a really good spot, really, really good spot
Yes.
to finish home, even with more injuries possibly to come.
Exactly. And like the thing that really excites me about them too is so far they've won primarily on the backs of guys that they didn't necessarily expect to be the leaders, right?
Yeah.
Trout's obviously there. Otani's still been good as a pitcher, but his bat hasn't come along fully yet. Rendon's having another down year so far from injuries last year and this year, just not hitting that great. It's been guys like Taylor, like I said, I talked about Taylor Ward, like he's been one of the best hitters in baseball, period, even better than Trout in a lot of metrics. And guys like today they had Sandoval be their starting pitcher, and he's been kind of iffy for most of his career so far. But so far this year, 2.03 ERA, 27 strikeouts in 26 innings. Like his career is almost twice that ERA, and so they're just getting big contributions from guys they weren't expecting to be the big contributors. So if the rest of the guys follow suit and they get back to where they're supposed to be, even if those surprises kind of fall off a little bit, you could see them even out and just be the team that they've shown, just in a different way.
Yeah. No, it seems like they did well today. Even Ward, I think he got 2 hits today. Just some consistent play. Anthony Redden too. I mean, 2 hits as well.
Yeah, they had a good day today. Overall.
Yeah, I mean,
they picked up Trout at 3 strikeouts. So.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
seriously, I know. So I mean, it seems like they're like you said, it's coming full circle where they're having everybody throughout the lineup. If some team's not making it happen or some person's not making it happen, they've got guys that, maybe they didn't expect to rely on that are starting to actually, take some responsibility and really come up with some wins to project them right to the top.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited again. I just want to see, even if it's just a wild card, even if it's just a chance.
You got to. Even if you're just a fan,
we have to see.
You have to see it.
Yeah, I want to see an Otani started playoff game with Trout center field and just see what those two could do. It's got to happen at some point. I think that right now it feels like it has to, at least, right? Like at this point, this is the best chance that they've had in a long time, just from the way they're starting off and the way the team's built. It's going to be really fun to see how they go down the stretch and see if they can keep it up.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on, dude. I appreciate it. It was a good time talking with you. I think we're actually just going to end the show right here this time around. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next Sunday at 6:30. And I mean, just really good time here. Really good show. And we'll hopefully have some more baseball news for you on what's happening. Hopefully the Angels keep it up. Yeah. But from there, thanks for joining, everybody.